Rasmus, can you just give us a quick overview about Crysis 3 and what exactly we've seen today, or what we're seeing today?
So the quick overview is that we're 20 years after the war that was fought in Crysis 2. You're playing as Prophet, which is, in our opinion, the richest character in the franchise, and we really wanted to clearly wrap up this guy's arc. We really wanted to exploit all the ups and all the pluses, and well, all the pluses is what we wanted to exploit from the previous games that we did, and kind of, you know, learn from that and create what we believe is the ideal cocktail, or the ideal recipe for our gameplay, which is the AAA gameplay. Maybe I should just explain really quickly. It's the assess, adapt, attack gameplay, where we make sure that you always have some peace and quiet to assess a situation, and then figure out how you're going to approach it, and then hoping that that's going to work out. And it's something with the new setting inside this nanodome, with all the 7 wonders visual concepts, is really a great foundation for that type of gameplay. So that is ultimately what the game is really about. Then there's, of course, the whole invasion side of the story. You're fighting against the Ceph, obviously. We're actually also fighting against Cell, who is getting frighteningly close to kind of unraveling the secrets of Ceph and their technology. And since they are a nasty corporation, that's not good, right? So there's all this stuff going on, I would say the human side plays a more specific role in this game than it did before, but Ceph obviously being the primary threat in the game.
Now, we saw some absolutely beautiful artwork that you demoed at during the presentation. I just wanted to ask you, because some of the shots we saw, like the tall grass, a troop of soldiers walking through tall grass, was it a case of you guys investigated what you could do with the vegetation, with the environment, and then grew gameplay from that, or was it more a case of gameplay came first and vegetation second?
We believe that the concept we came up with visually would really support our gameplay style. So we wanted to make this game inside this kind of environment. We figured that out pretty quickly, and then our art director spent a lot of time figuring out what was these different visual concepts be like, and what kind of gameplay would they kind of encourage. And then obviously, because this is a urban rainforest, you know, vegetation played a massive role, and we can scale that up and down depending on what kind of environment. Like, obviously an overgrown Central Park will be completely different than an overgrown Greenwich Village, for example, right? And we are implementing a new kind of vegetation system, so there, in the demo there isn't any physicality with the leaves, but there will be in the full game. And we generally just wanted to take this kind of, even though it's not a post-apocalyptic game, this sense of post-apocalypse to a completely new level that hasn't been seen in games or movies before. And I feel like we're succeeding with that, actually. So that's all great. But it's not like gameplay or visuals came first. We defined visuals, and we thought, like, this is going to be great because it's going to work like this with gameplay, because we know our gameplay formula, right? It's not new. It's just being iterated upon. So.
And talking about sort of like, you said during the presentation about you're still making adjustments about what you will do, what you won't do. Talking about the weapons for a moment, obviously if you can use the alien weapons now, how do you guys decide, okay, what we're going to introduce, because we're allowing players to get hands-on with this stuff now?
So, I mean, the funny thing is we could just have done that day one, right? But we didn't want to do it for day one because it needed to tie with the fiction. So right now, Prophet's suit has been so exposed to all this Ceph stuff all the time that he's now actually capable of doing it, right? So his ability to understand, interact with, and use Ceph technology is kind of an overarching theme of the whole game. The fact that you can shoot these weapons is just a snippet of that theme. Is actually also shining a little bit through in the hacking formula, and it's also part of, well, I guess the arc of Prophet figuring out who he really is. It ties into that as well. So we're making sure that we put this in because the timing was right, because we were going to convey a message where it made sense to put it in. In other words, we want to avoid arbitrarily put stuff just because it might be cool. We want to put it in when we're going to get most bang for that buck. And right now, what's the time for firing the alien weapons was the right time to do that, because it fitted the rest.
And with Prophet returning to the action, he sounds like a caged tiger, because he sounds so angry in the delivery of his lines. And you mentioned that it's almost like a revenge tour from now. Can you sort of just go in a bit more detail about that?
Yeah, so he's been through a lot of bad things in his past. I mean, he's been forced to make decisions that actually ended up costing men lives in his squad, and so he hasn't had success with listening to people like that. So he's reversing that situation now and starting to own the situation and taking charge of the situation. And even though he's a very controlled guy and he doesn't really yell at people, he's also a very serious guy, right? And he has a lot of anger lurking underneath the surface, and that comes through in his motivation in this game. And you can clearly hear it in his voice that he's not really satisfied with his situation, and that's what he wants to reverse. And he's doing that by turning himself into the hunter, right? And that exists on many levels, not only literally hunting things, also like what his ultimate goal is in the game. It also ties within this theme. So yeah, that's why he sounds like that. He's not a happy camper.
Okay, and just sort of wrapping up, we've seen the PC version. It looks absolutely wonderful, but it's obviously coming out for PS3 and Xbox 360. Can you sort of touch upon what you guys have found so far in development with the consoles as opposed to the PC version?
Well, we're trying to push everything we can that we develop tech-wise onto the consoles as well, and we're having quite a lot of success with that right now, even things that hasn't really been seen on consoles before. That being said, though, because we are very reliant on the quality of the art, and we're pushing that a lot, it's actually easier to do the translation, because if you're 100% reliant on the technology, that's a very hard one if you can't transfer that. But style-wise, we're also very, very conscious about what we want to do mood-wise between these 7 wonder concepts. So in some ways we might actually have an easier time translating this really successfully into a console version that is not going to feel different than we had with Crysis 2, because the richness and the density of the environment it's a lot less clean than the visuals in Crysis 2, right? You have all this stuff going on all over the place, and then obviously if you have hardware to support it, you will get all these extra 10% of niceness added on top of that, which is what some people strive for, and for some people it doesn't matter, right? So, but we want to cater for both those extremes. So.